Hey everybody, Vine Rob here, subbing in again for this Wednesday here on Starting Out Solitary. Welcome back. This is week 220. And this week we're talking about being tested as well as trials and tribulations in one's practice and spirituality. Before I get into my 2 cents on things, my perspective, if you will, I want to apologize in advance. I got a brand new microphone the other day. And I am still playing around with it. I finally got it hooked up to my stand for it and got it all hooked up yesterday and on Tuesday, and I'm still playing around with it, checking the quality, trying to tweak the levels and tweak the settings to get the most that I can out of it. So if the quality of this video seems different than the previous videos that I've made on this channel so far, that is the reason why. And I apologize if it's not the greatest. Like I said, I am still experimenting. It's going to take me some time to get it just the way I like it. I'm very much a perfectionist at heart. I know it doesn't pay to be a blind perfectionist, but yeah, that's just how I am. Same with my camera. My camera got knocked out the other day. I realized I didn't have it on my tripod tight enough, so I had fixed that, and I've yet to maneuver it to position it just the way I want. So it might seem a little out of place, or I might seem a little out of place. I don't know. Anyway, to get into the topic at hand. Wow, this is a very deep, intense, complicated, complex topic. But then again, that seems to be the case for all the topics that we've been doing the past few weeks. Why should this one be any different, So, please keep in mind that I have less than a year of practice, of study of witchcraft under my belt. I'm very much new to it. So I can't really talk about that as much as you would probably like or, hope. Or had hoped for me to do so, and a large part of that time this past year has been with me spending that time researching, studying, and figuring out how to incorporate things from a very Irish and Scottish perspective, and as well as from an Appalachian perspective, but specifically the parts of it that are or were originally Irish or Scottish, or were influenced by the Irish and Scottish immigrants that came to the Appalachian region. Those are my areas of specialty when it comes to magic of any kind, and I'm not quite at a level where I'm comfortable to really start practicing, wholesale or whatever word you want to use. From a witchcraft perspective, so I do apologize about that. But what I will say is, the closest that I've come to being tested as far as that aspect of my practice is that during this past year, I have come across a bunch of people who, some of which have been acquaintances for some time, and they'll hear that I'm very much new to witchcraft, that I'm looking into it, that I'm learning how to do it, and they want to help. Or if they don't want to help, they at least want to talk, to me about it, share ideas. And at first, that's cool, that's great, that's awesome. I'm glad about that. But unfortunately, it ends up failing miserably really quickly, because what I'm researching, what I'm looking to incorporate in my practice, the type of practice I'm building is very specific. And so a lot of things that a lot of people in the general witchcraft community does are things that aren't important to me or are not relevant to the practice that I am building. And a lot of people, they're like, well, then what you're doing is not witchcraft at all, simply because it doesn't have this, or this. Or like I got into a conversation with someone the other day, and they got up in arms in the fact that I don't use the terms Aspat, Sabbat. Just yeah, there are other terms too, but those are just the two that pops out of my head because those two terms are the ones that were discussed in a very enthusiastic and to some extent aggressive manner with this person. Unfortunately, they're just terms that are part of my lingo. They're not relevant to my practice. And that's not saying that, I'm trying to invalidate it for other people. No. I understand that it's something that is very relevant, very important, very special, very beautiful for other people. That's great. But I have very specific boundaries, limitations, where I want to build my practice, and I don't really want to go out of those areas that I'm specializing in. I think what's been the most amusing outside of that, well, both irritating, frustrating, and as well as being amusing, is when I get to talking to people who practice traditional witchcraft to one extent to another. They hear that I'm looking at things, researching things that are more traditional in nature, and then then they get really, really irritated or really, really disappointed or really, really upset with me because still what a lot that they're doing aren't relevant to me and what I'm looking to learn and to incorporate in my practice because it either comes from a specifically British traditional witchcraft practice or a traditional continental European witchcraft practice, or even from, say, like a traditional Central American or African traditional practice. And once again, I'm not trying to invalidate those people in their practices. I think it's awesome what they're doing. It's just it's just not me. It's just not what I'm doing. It's not what I'm looking to do. And unfortunately, these sort of situations have cost me opportunities of building friendships, especially with new people, or to transform acquaintances that I have held for a while now into actual friendships. Unfortunately, I've had to let go of those potential relationships, those potential friendships, because, well, they no longer wanted to have anything to do with me after our conversations, unfortunately. So, setting that aside, I've been tested in my spirituality, and I've been tested in my practice as a bard. I've been practicing bard since 2006, 2007. First time was tested in my practice. It was the first time I successfully performed a briac, or a spell, charm, that's either wholly or primarily of a verbal or vocal component. And I was at the time I was at my state school for the deaf and the blind. I think I was like in my junior year of high school at the time. I was in the dorms, and the heater just went out of commission for like 6-7 hours that day. And I had just got back from the library, having done some research on the computer, learning about, I don't know how to say the plural version of the word, but basically, how to perform briac in general, to perform a briac in general. And anyway, I was meditating, I was praying to Brige at the time, and it was getting kind of late, and the heat was still not on for, to take a shower. And I'm like, oh, well, this is going to suck, but I need to get clean. It's getting late. I have, school tomorrow. So, and then the sort of message I got from Brige was, hey, you were researching this. Why don't you try it? Why don't you try this out? Why don't you, give it a You know, give it a try. See what happens. You might be surprised. So I did before I went into the shower. And it worked. You know, the hot water came back on. And funny thing was, at the time, or what happened was that there were 2 showers to a bathroom. And the other shower in that bathroom was still ice cold. So, I felt like, you know, Breach was kind of testing me. It's like, hey, you're doing this research. Research is good, but at some point you got to put what you've learned, what you know, into doing. You got to practice it. So yeah, just to give you one example. I say in general, as far as my spirituality and my spiritual life goes, there's been many times that Breach has tested me. And everything that I've learned from those, you know, those tests, those trials, and those tribulations is to trust her. In fact, out of all the deities that I've met and that I've interacted with along the way, the only one that I can truly trust at all, that I can depend on at all, is Breach herself, and she's proven that to me time and time again. She's always been there with me at the worst of times, at the worst of situations. Excuse me. Especially when health is involved. In fact, that's how I met her. That's how she came to my life. I had a really bad, really terrible health situation going on, and I pretty much like, hey, I could really use some help. Any deity, you know, hear me, help me out. And she did. And the funny thing was, is at the time I was at that phase. I was very much early in my practice at the time. I was very much at that phase where I was trying to find a patron or matron deity, because what I had learned from the only resource that I had at the time, which was a terrible resource, looking back on it, it's like, hey, you kind of need a matron or patron deity. If you can get both, that's even greater. So said the resource. So that's what I tried to do. And Breach was the one who answered the call. And it was due to something that I had seen on TV that mentioned the goddess Breach when I was recovering, that let me know that, yeah, it was her who answered my call. And since then, it's happened time and time again. I have a bit of a minor phobia when it comes to anything related to hospitals, clinics, doctors, so on and so forth. And I've had times in the past where I've had surgery done, and I've gone into it and I'm like, oh, this is not good. I am basically scared out of my life. And the only way that I've been able to be calm enough to go through with it, to have it performed on me, is to turn to Breach, to pray to her, so on and so forth. Yeah. The biggest test that I've had happened back in 2014. At the time I was interacting with some of the Norse deities, I was still practicing a form of Norse paganism / polytheism alongside of Irish paganism / polytheism. And one of the deities that I was interacting with was wanting to kind of take over as my main deity, to the point that she was trying to basically force Breach out of my life and to forcefully take her role. And that turned into a crazy situation that had consequences on my personal life, on my mundane life, on my spiritual life, so on and so forth. In the end, the only reason why I came out of it unscathed was because I chose Breach. Or I chose her so much as the aspect of it that I had a choice, because part of it I didn't really have a choice. But there's parts of the situation where I had an active choice. I was very much an active participant with some control of the situation. It was very much a learning experience. At the time, 2014 was just a crazy year for me on a spiritual level anyway. Mainly because I had gone a couple years without interacting with Breach at all, and then she came into my life like a roiling inferno, letting me know the one major aspect of the nature of our relationship, and then of the devotional relationship that I've had with her, and that she wanted to continue. And then things that year just got so crazy to the point that I was kind of on the rocks with her. And this sort of test that happened, on one hand, was to help deal with a really, really terrible ongoing situation that was going on, but was also sort of a test to see if we could come through it, fairly unscathed. Which that side of things didn't work out nowhere near according to plan. But better, stronger, and I've been healing on a metaphysical and a spiritual level for the past few years since then. The other main thing that I can think of off the top of my head that I know I've been tested in my spiritual life has to deal with spirit journeying. Some people will use the term astral travel. I don't use the term astral travel for a couple of different reasons. But and I've been spirit journeying for the past few years. I'd say since 2013, 2014, and because of some of the aspects of the situation I just told you, I basically lost my ability to journey in the other world. And since then, I've been working to regain my ability, my capability there, as well as retraining myself and old techniques that I have either left by the wayside or have pretty much have just how sometimes some things you become rusty with because you haven't practiced it in a while. That was basically that kind of situation. And so I've been studying and training and practicing to get back at it. Not only to do it in general, but to do it on a better level than where I was at before. And I'm still in the process of doing that, but it's come a lot easier than it was a few years ago. And last year, May of 2018, was the first time that I dealt with hostile entities, hostile spirits in a few years. But the difference between the main difference with last year's situation is, unlike with previous similar experience of the past, I was able to fight back, and not just fight back, defend myself after the fact, after it came out of it, but to do so while I was still traversing the other world, which was a very big accomplishment for me at that point in time in my practice. So it's something that I'm still working on now. But just the fact that happened, I felt like that was a test on so many different levels. In general, when it comes to being tested or going through trials and tribulations in my life, be it spiritual, on a practice level, what have you, I turn to Breach first. I then turn to my friends and my family second. My family, my friends. Third, I turn to creation. What can I create? Like I said, I've been a practicing bard since 2006. I always will be a bard first and foremost. And even as I advance and progress in my study and my practice of witchcraft, I will always turn to bard work, to the bardic arts, at least from a metaphysical and magical perspective of things. First, that's just my natural go-to. That will always be my go-to thing, no matter what. And so when a terrible situation comes, especially with like a loss of a loved one, or just a situation that there's no way of getting around it, there's no way of it, dodging it. It's something that you're being confronted with that you cannot escape. It may overwhelm me at that point, but as soon as I find myself in a headspace, in a place where I can calm down, where I can regain my senses, where I can, where I no longer feel like I'm overwhelmed, I go to create. What can I take from the situation? What can I create? Lyrically, poetry-wise, story-wise. What can I fashion from this terrible situation that just happened? And looking at things, finding the good from the bad, turning a terrible situation into a hopeful one, finding something that you can find inspiring, as well as being inspirational to others. Using aspects of the experience that you just gone through is a beautiful thing, and it is also a method by which I cope from such situations, and to transform not only myself, but how I feel and what I think from such situations, to make myself feel better, but just also to make the whole situation seem better. And no matter how much I wish that such situations would not happen, from a bardic perspective, there are two ways of seeking and activating and bringing about emboss, or divine inspiration. That's through positive and negative experiences: grief, loss, pain, suffering. Also helps turn the three cauldrons that are within us all, and allows the bard to be able to reach emboss, to embrace emboss, to experience an emboss enough to pour out forth various creations. So it's that, as well as having great family, good friends, people that I love and who love me, that I can turn to for comfort, and to share these terrible experiences with, to help me, to work through it and to get over it, and to come out the other side as well and as whole as possible, and to heal from it, and to move forward just as strong, if not stronger than before. Anyway, I'm sorry if this video isn't all that helpful. I hope you enjoyed it either way. Take care. Talk to y'all later. May Breach bless.